Welcome to this deep dive into Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. We've got your notes and highlights right here from the book, and we're going to try to unpack some of the more insightful nuggets about, how our minds work when it comes to money. It's so much more than just, crunching numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
really is. And you know what Housel does so brilliantly is he peels back the layers and reveals why we sometimes make financial choices that seem, a little irrational on
Yeah,
the
it's a
surface.
little irrational, for sure.
He reminds us that money is intertwined with our emotions, our past experiences, and even plain luck.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Right from the start, Housel kind of throws out this idea that finance is like a purely numbers-driven game.
Yeah.
And he uses a great example, the Great Depression, to illustrate this.
Yeah, that's such a powerful example, and it really underscores his point. The same global event, the Great Depression, had wildly different outcomes for people.
Right.
Take the Kennedys, for instance. They actually prospered during that time, while millions of others were facing, devastating financial hardship.
So how do we reconcile those two drastically different realities? It seems like there's more than just numbers at play.
Exactly. Each of us carries a unique money history. You come to the table with your own background, your own experiences, and they all color how you make financial decisions. Someone who grew up during a recession might be super cautious, while someone who came of age during a booming market might be more willing to take big risks.
Makes total sense.
Hmm.
It's like our individual money stories are playing out subconsciously, even if we're not fully aware of it. Which brings us to this intriguing paradox. Houseful presents the lottery. It's statistically unlikely to make anyone wealthy, but it still attracts huge spending, especially among lower-income households.
Mm.
What's going on there?
Yeah, it seems illogical at first glance, right?
Yeah.
But when you factor in the psychology, you see that it's not just about cold, hard logic.
Right.
For someone who's struggling to make ends meet, even the tiniest chance of winning big can provide an overwhelming sense of hope, an escape from their current reality. It becomes an emotional outlet, a psychological comfort, more than a calculated investment strategy.
It's that glimmer of hope, right? That what could be. And speaking of mindsets, Housel points out this really interesting idea that money as we know it, these complex financial systems we navigate, are relatively new inventions in human history
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
it's true. And it's something we often overlook. We're so accustomed to thinking about 401ks, mortgages, retirement plans. But historically speaking,
Right.
these are very recent
But
developments.
we're all kind of figuring this out as we go along.
Yeah,
It's like we're all new to the game in a way.
in a way, yes. And recognizing that can be strangely comforting. Maybe it's not that you're bad with money. Maybe it's that we're all navigating a fairly new and complex landscape.
No wonder it feels complicated sometimes. But this leads to another big idea that Housel explores,
Yeah.
the role of luck in financial success. He uses Bill Gates as a prime example.
All right, the Bill Gates story is a great way to understand this concept. He was brilliant and driven, absolutely. But he also had some incredibly fortunate circumstances, like having access to a computer in the 1970s when that was incredibly rare, especially for a high school student. That access played a huge role in his trajectory.
That's like a perfect storm. Talent and opportunity colliding.
Oh.
Makes you wonder how many potential Bill Gates are out there who just haven't had those lucky breaks.
That's a question worth pondering. I think the key takeaway is to acknowledge that luck plays a bigger role than we often give it credit for. It's not to diminish hard work, but to keep us from becoming overconfident, which can lead to bad decisions.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at success stories and think it's all merit. But sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. Which brings us to another captivating figure. Housel dives into John D. Rockefeller, another classic example of incredible financial success. But he cautions against putting these outliers like Rockefeller on a pedestal.
Yeah, it's important to keep the big picture in mind. These individuals were exceptions, not necessarily models for everyone to follow. Rockefeller was incredibly bold, took enormous risks, sometimes even ignored laws. His boldness paid off, but imagine if it hadn't, his story would be told very differently.
So should we not be looking to these big success stories for inspiration or guidance?
Well, instead of trying to replicate the outliers, focus on the patterns. What are the replicable behaviors and strategies that lead to success for a wider range of people in different situations? What can you actually control and implement in your own life?
I like that.
Yeah.
It's about finding the common threads, the principles that hold true across the board.
Exactly. One consistent pattern you see is the link between structuring your day and increased happiness and productivity. It's not as exciting as striking oil,
Right.
but it's something you have more control over and can make a real difference.
Okay, that's something I can work with. Always trying to get better at managing my time. But Housel brings up another thought-provoking concept, The idea that capitalism, while generating wealth, also cultivates envy. And envy, he argues, can lead us to make bad decisions.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? He uses the example of a baseball player making a good salary but feeling inadequate compared to a teammate earning significantly more.
Right.
It's
So
relative.
comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah.
right? Even when you're doing well, there's always someone seemingly doing better.
And that feeling, that envy, can drive us to do things we wouldn't otherwise do. Housel tells this compelling story about Rajat Gupta, a successful CEO who got caught up in insider trading because he wanted to become a billionaire. He had immense wealth already, but it wasn't enough. He
Wow.
wanted to be in that upper echelon.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
Mhm.
Greed and envy clouded his judgment and ultimately led to his downfall.
It highlights the importance of defining your own measures of success rather than constantly comparing yourself to others. Because envy can push you towards taking unnecessary risks and ultimately making choices that are harmful.
It's a slippery slope. This makes me think about another point Housel makes: the distinction between making money and keeping it. He tells the story of Jesse Livermore, a brilliant trader who built a fortune but ultimately lost it all. How was that even possible?
It illustrates that building wealth and preserving it require different skill sets. Livermore was a master at reading the markets and taking risks, but he lacked the discipline and humility to protect his gains.
So what does this tell us about keeping the wealth we've worked so hard to build?
It underscores the importance of fear and humility. Optimism and risk-taking might be essential for accumulating wealth, but fear and a healthy dose of caution are crucial for holding on to it. It's recognizing that you don't have to win every time,
Right.
but you absolutely have to avoid catastrophic losses.
So it's almost a shift in mindset from playing offense to playing defense, protecting what you've earned.
Exactly. It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. And this leads us perfectly into the last section of the book, where Housel talks about patience and diversification, using the example of Heinz Berggruen, a renowned art collector.
Art collecting.
Mhm.
How does that tie into personal finance?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Well, Berggruen's approach offers a compelling analogy for investing in general. He acquired hundreds of pieces over the years, some of which turned out to be worthless, but a select few, like his Picassos, skyrocketed in value.
Wow.
His success wasn't about picking every winner, but about letting his successes outweigh his failures. It's a long game, and that's a crucial lesson for any investor. You don't have to be right all the time. In fact, you're bound to make some wrong calls along the way.
Sure.
The key is to have a diversified portfolio and a long-term perspective.
Right.
That way, your winning investments can more than make up for the occasional losses.
That reminds me of what we were discussing earlier about the role of luck. You know, if you're diversified, you increase your chances of being in the right place at the right time, even if you can't predict exactly what the right place will be.
Absolutely. Diversification is a powerful tool for managing the inherent risk that comes with markets and, frankly, with life itself.
So it's not about trying to time the market perfectly or pick the next hot stock. It's about building a solid foundation that can weather the ups and downs that are bound to happen.
Exactly. It's a strategy for the long haul, not for quick wins. And that's where patience comes in. Berggruen didn't become a world-renowned art collector overnight. It took years of collecting, learning, and refining his taste.
It's like anything worthwhile, right? It takes time. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, but real wealth building is often a slow and steady process. It requires discipline, a willingness to learn, and the ability to delay gratification.
And that brings us back to one of Housel's core themes, the psychology of money. It's not just understanding the mechanics of investing, it's about understanding ourselves, our emotions, our biases, and how they influence our financial decisions.
Speaking of those psychological factors, how can we become more aware of them? Are there practical things we can do to make better choices? What's the first step?
Well, a great starting point is to think about your own money story. You know, your personal history and experiences with money deeply shape your attitudes and behaviors. For example, was money a constant source of stress in your household growing up? Or did you experience a sense of financial security?
Yeah.
These early experiences can have a lasting impact, even if you're not consciously aware of it.
It's like those patterns we talked about. Our past experiences create patterns in our thinking and behavior that we then carry into our financial decisions.
Precisely. And once you become aware of those patterns, you can start to challenge them and make more conscious choices.
So it's about identifying those ingrained beliefs and asking, are these beliefs helping me or are they holding me back?
That's powerful.
It is. And another practical step is to pay attention to the emotions driving your financial decisions. Are you making choices out of fear, greed, or envy, or are they aligned with your long-term goals and values?
That's where emotional intelligence comes in, right?
Yeah.
Being able to recognize and manage our emotions, especially when it comes to something as charged as money. Absolutely. It's about pausing before you make a big financial decision and asking yourself, what's really motivating this choice? Is this a rational decision or am I being swayed by emotions?
It's about bringing a sense of self-awareness and mindfulness to our financial lives.
Hmm.
Not always easy in a world that bombards us with messages about spending, investing, and getting rich quick.
It's a challenge, but a worthwhile one. When you understand the psychology behind your money decisions, you start to create a healthier and more fulfilling relationship with money itself.
It's not just about the numbers in our bank account, right? It's about that peace of mind that comes from feeling in control of your finances.
You nailed it. That sense of control comes from understanding not just what you're doing with your money, but why you're doing it. That's the power of what Morgan Housel offers in the psychology of money.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what key takeaways have resonated most with you?
Um, For me, one of the most powerful insights is that financial success is not a destination, it's a journey. It's not about reaching a certain net worth, but about making consistent, informed choices over time that compound into long-term wealth and security.
It's about building a solid foundation, brick by brick, rather than chasing quick riches or the latest fad. That takes patience, discipline, and the ability to stay the course even when things get turbulent.
Yes, and I also think it's crucial to diversify, not just our investments, but our sources of income and even our skill sets. In a world that's increasingly unpredictable, having multiple streams of income and a diverse range of skills provides invaluable security and resilience.
Like not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Diversifying across assets, income sources, and skills helps weather the inevitable storms.
And one final takeaway that I find particularly important. Financial success isn't just about accumulating wealth, it's about using that wealth to live a meaningful life, aligning your financial goals with your values, and using your resources to make a positive impact on the world.
It's not just about getting rich, it's about living rich. Experiences, relationships, making a difference. Using your financial resources to create a life that's both prosperous and purposeful.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. I think that message resonates with so many people, regardless of where they are in their financial journey.
Because ultimately money is a tool, right? It's not the destination, it's how we use it to create the life we want.
And speaking of tools, as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, I'm curious, what are some tangible things our listener can do right now to apply these insights? Where would you suggest they start?
Well, a great first step is simply becoming more aware of your own thoughts and feelings about money. The next time you're faced with a financial decision, big or small, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, what's really driving this choice? Is this decision aligned with my values and long-term goals, or am I reacting out of fear scarcity or that need to keep up with the Joneses? It's bringing that mindfulness and self-awareness we talked about earlier into our daily lives, right? Noticing those automatic thoughts and reactions and asking, is this serving me or is there a better way?
Exactly. Another practical tip is to start tracking your spending. It doesn't have to be complicated, a simple spreadsheet, a notebook, whatever works for you. The key is to become more conscious of where your money is actually going and identify areas where you might be able to save or invest more effectively.
That's such a good point. It's so easy to feel like money is just disappearing without a clear sense of where it all went. But once you start tracking, you can make more intentional choices about how you're using those resources.
Absolutely. And once you have a better understanding of your spending patterns, you can create a budget that truly aligns with your goals and values. It doesn't have to be restrictive or overwhelming. In fact, the simpler, the better. The key is to find a plan that feels manageable and sustainable so you can stick with it over time.
I think that's key, finding what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to budgeting or investing. It's about experimenting, finding the strategies and tools that fit your personality and lifestyle, and being willing to adjust as needed.
Couldn't agree more. And it's important to remember that financial education is a continuous journey. There's always more to learn, and the financial landscape is constantly evolving. So stay curious, be open to new ideas, and don't hesitate to seek out help when you need it. There are so many resources available, books, podcasts, financial advisors, online courses. You don't have to navigate this alone.
It's like anything else, right? The more you learn, the more you realize there's still more to learn.
Right.
But as we wrap up, I think it's worth emphasizing that financial success isn't just about the numbers. It's about creating a life that's rich in experiences, relationships, and positive impact.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's about finding that sweet spot where financial well-being and personal fulfillment intersects, using money as a tool to create a life that's both prosperous and purposeful.
Well, on that inspiring note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money. It's been a fascinating exploration, and I truly appreciate your insights.
The pleasure was all mine. I hope our listener found this conversation as thought-provoking as we have.
And as we leave you today, we have one final question for you to ponder. If, as Morgan Housel suggests, luck plays a significant role in financial success, what can you do to create more of it in your own life? What steps can you take to maximize your chances of being in the right place at the right time?
It's a question worth exploring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to create a life that's both financially secure and deeply fulfilling.